Welcome. Today is August 11th, 2020. You are listening to Counter Culture with Aaron Lujan. It is an independent thinking, free thinking podcast available on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all the major podcast players. Counterculture is where we think critically. We are not partisan. We're not into parties unless they have carne asada and craft beer. We're not Republicans. We're not Democrats. We are free-thinking Americans, free-thinking humans who want to gather multiple sources of information to arrive at our own conclusions and come to our own conclusions. So, I'm going to cover the top news of August 11th. I'm going to begin my first segment focusing on Trump because Trump seems to be taking up all the air in the room. So let's get it going. Fox News, everybody's favorite. Trump orders $400 per week unemployment payments amid COVID crisis, hits Dems for stonewalling. So, as a constitutionalist, I'm not a fan of executive orders, but we live in unprecedented times where we have one wing of the Congress completely opposed to anything the president does on a partisan basis. So, in order for Trump to do the right thing, if you agree that Americans deserve more money, Trump went around Congress and added a $400 per week supplemental unemployment payment to out-of-work Americans earning less than $100,000. So that'll be welcome news, I'm sure, to people who even hate Trump and need to pay their bills. The Guardian's reporting that Secret Service escorts Trump from press briefing after shooting outside the White House. Many of you may have heard of this. He was in the middle of a coronavirus press briefing. There was an armed man at the White House who got into a crouching position, suggesting that he was armed and going to shoot. Law enforcement shot him in an unprecedented, very rare move. In the middle of his press briefing, Secret Service ushered him out of the room. Pretty interesting visuals in 2020, I must say. Business Insiders reporting Trump pledged to permanently scrap the payroll taxes used to fund Social Security and Medicare if he wins. 15+% of our payroll checks go to fund baby boomers, Social Security retirements, and Medicare. I'm of the opinion that it is mathematically impossible or mathematically unsustainable for Social Security to be available for the millennial generations and even Generation X. They are paying into it. They will get nothing out of it. It's a really bad casino deal, in my opinion. We should have the ability to opt in or opt out. We don't have that freedom that Ron Paul advocated for in 2006. What Business Insider is implying is that this is all a scheme, and it's going to leave Americans without anything for retirement. But if you believe that mathematically Medicare is unsustainable, as I'm convinced that it is, Trump's decision could be welcome news and long-term a wise decision if you consider the fact that we will get a tax break, which Kennedy's administration proved would only help the economy and long-term won't have any material effect because Social Security is growing broke anyways. Moving along, Breitbart's reporting Pelosi, Trump's executive orders are absurdly unconstitutional. Yeah, I think what's absurd is Nancy Pelosi, but that's my definition of absurdity, and her $12 pint ice cream. Obviously didn't raise any concerns during so much during the Bush era about his unconstitutional executive actions, clearly didn't issue any indictments of President Obama's for his executive orders, but of course here we are in 2020, everything's political, everything's partisan, and but I do agree. Reason I picked this article is that if we were to have a strict constitutional measurement of our president and our Congress, specifically the president, executive orders are unconstitutional. They've been abused, but accordingly, Pelosi only makes those allegations when it's partisan and it fits her agenda. Speaking of corruption and illegal activity, the Federalist Papers has a very interesting article. Obama's hidden legacy revealed 165 pages of records surface, exposed cash for fetal tissue scandal. In case you didn't know, it's illegal in the United States of America to sell baby body parts. You cannot take human body parts and place them on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. I'm being a little facetious, but it's illegal. Judicial Watch obtained in a lawsuit by government watchdog group, obtained the details of contracts between the infamous Planned Parenthood, the biggest butcherer of human children, and three companies, Advanced Bioscience Resources, STEM Express LLC, and Novogenics Laboratories. Paid affiliates, again, everything's proxy, right? Everything exchanges hands multiple times like in drug deals because you need to do this in darkness. Paid affiliates of Planned Parenthood to acquire aborted fetuses and then sold the fetal tissue to their respective customers at substantially higher prices than in their documented costs. Super illegal. And I hope that Tom Fitton's quote is heard loud and wide. He says, these records show, and Tom Fitton, by the way, is the president of Judicial Watch, the group that broke this. Love Tom Fitton. Dude, I want to hit the gym with Tom Fitton. If you guys seen this guy, dude, this guy is retarded swole. Has nothing to do with this. These records show that the FDA was trafficking in human fetal parts. Incredibly, there continues to be a push to reopen these monstrous experiences. And then he goes on to say the Federalist paper goes on to say they may have broken the laws of man. They definitely broke the law of God. I agree. Michelle Obama seen as giving Joe Biden best chance to defeat President Trump, according to Liberty Daily. And I wanted to dig in quickly into the politics of this because this is very interesting, right? We're already due for a announcement from Creepy Joe's campaign about who's going to be his black female VP candidate, because it would be a crime if he did not pick anything other than a female or a woman. Kamala Harris had been on top of that list. But the Patriot Post actually was the original article via Liberty Daily, says something interesting, which is Joe Biden is in a really tough corner. He has to walk a very fine line between the colorful spectrum that is the Democratic Party. He's got one side on him who wants a black female but doesn't want to be disenfranchised by his racially charged constituents to his left. And then on his other side, he's got more moderate Democratic supporters and independent voters who are going to be looking more at the substantiveness of the candidate. And so he's got to find what, in my opinion, would be a midget, black, transgendered person. That would make real progress. And then everyone would be happy. Everything's awesome when you're in part of the team. The podcast is going to get better, guys, because I'm going to have that morning energy. Woo-wee. The Western Journal is reporting fake licenses flood U.S. ahead of critical election. And as I said on my Facebook post, it ain't about the club. I think this could be about voter fraud. And of course, in the city of Chicago, Chicago O'Hare International Airport confiscated 19,888 fake driver's licenses as part of over 1,500 shipments, according to the Custom Border Patrol Agency. And guess where they're coming from? Oh, yes, China and Hong Kong. Quote, the acting director of the Port of Chicago says these counterfeit driver's licenses can lead to disastrous consequences. Criminal organizations use these counterfeit IDs to avoid attracting attention to their illegal activities. According to Ballotpedia, 34 states require identification to vote in November, with 18 requiring a photo ID. Some of these barcodes worked. Some of these fake IDs were for college-age students, interestingly, which is why I think people in the Twitter sphere said this is all about the election. Interesting times we live in, guys. We are in for a treat in November. Remember the 5th of November. The Federalist Papers has an article out. Federal Elections Commission's chief issues warning. Substantial chance of no results on election night. The Federal Elections Commissioner Ellen Weintraub said on Monday to CNN, quote, let me just tell everybody we're all going to need to take a deep breath and be patient this year because there's a substantial chance we are not going to know on election night what the results are. Possibly for the presidency, but maybe for many other races that are important to people. And that's okay. If it takes a little bit longer to count all the votes accurately, that's what we need to do in order to ensure that everyone's vote counts. So what I find interesting is they're already prepping us to not have a decision on election night. It's not going to be as simple and as easy as a free and fair election like we've had over the last 220 years, folks. As I look into my crystal ball, I see chaos. I see chaos in America. More than 97,000 children tested positive for COVID just before students started returning to school, report says, according to fake news outlet CNN. Again, when I report CNN articles, unless it's an asteroid or something obviously true, it's going to be a critique here on Counterculture because we're countering the mainstream narrative. This was a very popular article, timed perfectly, early August, ahead of the kids going to school early. I never went to back to school early August. I remember going back in like September. I mean, it was a good year if it was like mid-September, you know what I mean? Like after, what is that, Labor Day? I always confuse Labor Day and Memorial Day. But no. CNN times this perfectly right before anyone has a chance to really get back into school. So really, guys, there's 97,000 children tested positive for COVID-19. Report says, and if you dig through the report, they don't mention anything about the report till the very end of the article. And published by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Children's, sorry guys, knocked over my equipment, and the Children's Hospital Association. They don't explain any of this statistical methodology of the study. They just say a study by these groups. My question is American Academy of Pediatrics controlled? Is the Children's Hospital Association controlled? Because that's a really bold statement not to back up any, not even an explanation of the study. They don't even say in the headline who states it. It's just report says. And common sense, let's trust that everything that they're claiming is true. If there was 97,000 children tested positive for COVID, why don't we have any visuals of sick kids? Why don't I know of any? I know a lot of kids with families with autism. I know families with cancer, pediatric cancer, incredibly tragic, things that don't get reported out very much. I know people who are addicted to opiates. But where are all these kids that have COVID-19? Doesn't make sense to me on its surface. Just doesn't seem logical. But my next article, What Really Happened, would explain it. Bill Gates on COVID. Most U.S. tests are completely garbage. So, in one hand, we have the CNN telling us, don't send your kids back to school. It's incredibly dangerous. 97,000 kids have been tested to be COVID-19 84 positive. But yet, on the other hand, you have Bill Gates saying the tests are complete garbage, and Bill Gates is the one being propped up, not by Liberty Daily, not by WorldNet Daily, not by Breitbart, not by Counterculture, but by the corporate media. Completely garbage. Yeah, I'm going to again agree with Bill Gates, not because it fits my narrative, but because I've actually done the research on the tests, and there is no reliability on the existing tests as we know them. Moving along, the COVID road. Zero Hedge is reporting financially devastated. 83% of New York City restaurants unable to pay July rent. New York City Hospitality Alliance surveyed 500 owners and operators in the city. 83% of the respondents indicated they could not pay the rent in July. 37% said, we ain't even going to pay the rent. I ain't even going to court. Yeah, they're not going to pay the rent, you guys. And if Open Table restaurant data is reliable, it's showing huge depression in foot traffic to restaurants, especially in the month of July. Well, I know this personally because I work with independently owned restaurants and small businesses. They're hurting, you guys. And that's what I do all day long, and it's the reason why we're having this podcast in the middle of the day. Moving along, lunch with Lujan. CBN News. Why the smear campaign against hydroxychloroquine? I love my Christian friends. I love my Christian media, brothers and sisters. Love you guys. Love you guys. But when I read CBN news articles, when I read Christianity Today, when I read news organizations that write articles for a church audience, I have to smile at the naivety of it all. And I think it reveals how asleep the church is and how captured the hearts and minds of the American church are, and how this makes perfect sense in the larger scheme of things. Because historically, the church has always been the buffer to the culture of the society, if you will. They've always been the rail guards, if you will. And if you take a tour down history, it's been Christians and the Church of Jesus that has birthed America and has given the world most of its goodies, for lack of a better word. And so as I read this CBN news article, one thing I want to point out is, yes, hydroxychloroquine is a cure. Yes, it's a preventative measure. But the CBN article speaks to their audience like, well, why would the media demonize hydroxychloroquine if it's such a good thing? And why would Fauci not tell the truth? Oblivious and naive to the fact that we're dealing with foaming at the mouth, T-Rex, pit bull level evil that just want to chew your head off and enjoy it. And that's what I want to say to those in Christian news media. Sorry, guys, moving along. WorldNet Daily poll: 1 in 3 Americans would decline the COVID-19 vaccine. Yeah, of course. Because we're in the middle of a great awakening, and people realize that the people running the vaccine operation are pedophiles and are eugenicists, and Margaret Sanger is a household name, and Illuminati is a household term, and hydroxychloroquine is a household term, and false flag is a household term, and the Aaron Lujan of 2005 that used to get uninvited to parties and unfriended on Facebook are... My talking points back then are now mainstream in the internet culture today. It's amazing to see. A little part of it, I admit, is pride. I told you so, which I want to repent of. But it's encouraging to see something that I didn't think was going to happen, that we were going to have a mass awakening. And it's incredibly encouraging. Now, that's the reason why 1 in 3 Americans, I think, would decline at COVID-19. And it's probably a lot more. But the fact that we have that information is very welcome news. Gateway Pundit, speaking of COVID, Nashville lawmaker wants people not wearing a mask to be tried for murder or attempted murder. And then, of course, in the city council meeting, the young lady, assuming she's young, was told, ma'am, we don't have that authority at the city council level. That's a state issue that needs to be passed at the legislature. But I highlight this article because it goes to show you the mentality of where the pro-mask, pro-COVID 1984 people are. And I'm going to start using COVID 1984 because I feel like it's just a great way to remind everyone every time we mention this air quotes pandemic that it's actually a Trojan horse for tyranny and the stripping of our constitutional God-given rights here in the United States of America. I digress. This Nashville councilwoman believes that people should be forced to wear that, and they should be held accountable to murder charges if somebody contracts that. That's where we're at. Don't have time to extrapolate that. Working on getting a really exciting guest on the show. She emailed me yesterday. Very famous. Pray for me, you guys. I don't want to make any premature announcements until she agrees, but she did email me back, and I bring that up to create some excitement that we will be having some very juicy conversations with some very dynamic, interesting, reputable, accomplished people that, let's just say, have served this country. So let's hope that she replies back and gets on the show. August 8th, 2020 article from The Federalist tragically shares a story of a girl slaughtered after her alleged rapist was released from jail over COVID-19 concerns. Ibrahim Bouachi hunted and killed his accuser, beautiful Carla Dominguez, after being released from jail because of concerns the Wuhan virus would put Bouachi and his lawyers at risk of falling ill. Well, Fortunately, Boashi didn't get COVID. His lawyers are, I'm hoping, are well and healthy. Unfortunately, Dominguez was raped, strangled after being abducted from her native of Venezuela in Alexandria, Virginia. So just a reminder, you guys, of what happens when we release criminals, because we got to stop the pandemic. We got to stop the pandemic. We got to flatten the curve. I think we've had plenty of time to flatten the curve. When can we get back to freedom? 21 minutes in, Mail Online is reporting COVID jobs bloodbath as people employed falls 730,000 since lockdown. So 730,000 jobs since the lockdown began have been lost in the ether. Absolute total bloodbath. 2.7 million unemployment claims have hit the books. The largest quarterly slump since the financial crisis. Total hours worked slumped by a fifth over the quarter to the lowest level since 1994. Yeah, the economy is not doing good, you guys. And if the economy isn't doing good in New York City, if it's not doing good there here in the USA, think about what it's doing in the global third world. And a lot of us, the United States, don't think about this, but I want to think about this. And I know everybody thinks that Infowars.com is nasty, but Infowars.com links to a study. According to research published by Imperial College of London and the Johns Hopkins University, around 1.4 million people are expected to die from untreated TB infections due to the coronavirus lockdown. See, we're not thinking that medicine's not getting to places because of lockdowns. We're not thinking that, yeah, we may be missing our gymnastics class with our 5-year-old daughter, but what about the 736 million people that live in Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Congo, and the Bangladesh nations? So bad that Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, quote, so abrupt and punishing that he begged for forgiveness. I've heard that famine is an issue now and that more people are going hungry as trade and supply lines have been disrupted. And to quote the article, thanks to the misguided enthusiasm of Western governments for imprisoning entire populations in their homes, thereby triggering a global recession, tens of millions of people will die of starvation in low-income countries. You guys, the COVID devastation goes beyond you not being able to get your nails done. It goes to the third world. If America sneezes, the world gets the flu. Yahoo News. Police shooting reignites political debate and looting as Chicago's Mag Mile trashed, 13 cops injured, 2 people shot. So shifting back to Chicagoland, Chicago Tribune, in fact, this weekend, very famous area of Chicago, a lot of luxury stores were looted, windows were smashed. This whole incident started with a 20-year-old man shooting at police. Again, that gets reported on social media. This is an opportunity to loot. So obviously this is not about Black Lives Matter anymore, especially when video comes out where a woman is literally stealing things from a department store and saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And she sounded completely unintelligent and, in my opinion, demon-possessed. But that's my humble opinion. Black Lives Matter Chicago, which protested outside a near Southside police precinct Monday night, blasted Lightfoot for accepting the police version of events and not doing more to institute reforms. So Beetlejuice, Mayor Lightfoot, there's nothing you can do to make these people happy. You've been enabling and aligning with them, and they still hate your guts. Why not just come join the good guys and allow for peace and prosperity to prevail and not destroy our neighborhoods and watch people die? That's my idea. Imagine the morale of the Chicago Police Department. Chaos in Chicago. Bridges raised to prevent gun-toting looters getting to downtown. Government Slaves was reporting that I guess there's a bridge in Chicago that separates those two areas, and they had to lift the bridge up just to stop the crowds. I mean, just think about, this is America in 2020, you guys. It's just incredible time. But don't worry, Chicago Mayor Lightfoot, #sarcasm alert, is on the job. She's breaking up a gay beach party. And I love the way the article is written by Breitbart. Lightfoot tweeted a photograph of a gathering near Lake Michigan featuring a large group of shirtless, swimsuit-clad men enjoying the sun at Montrose Beach, near the city's LGBTQ-friendly Boys Town neighborhood. I know you guys know I do that really well. Boys Town. Boys Town. Yeah, so Mayor Lightfoot didn't like the boys at Boys Town and their swimsuit-clad LGBTQ festival, and said, "You guys, pack up your snacks and your beach chairs and your what are those things called? Zimas in the 90s, the flavored wine coolers, and it's time to go home." But failed to protect downtown. And I think my next article by Breitbart gives us some insight into this. We all remember, I always want to call her Lil' Kim. If anyone listened to rap in the late 90s, we remember Lil' Kim. I think her name was Kim Fox, or was she feuding with Foxy? My 90s hip-hop people know what I'm talking about, but the DA, the prosecutor, the district attorney, Kim Fox from Chicago, looks like one of those rappers. Anyways, she's dropped 25,000 felony cases, including charges of murder, and she became famous, and she was on my radar after she dropped the hate crime hoax from former Fox Empire star Jussie Smollett, according to analysis released by the Chicago Tribune on Monday. So thank you, Chicago Tribune. You might get suicided, so I would look into some protection, because Chicagoland looks like they're having a renaissance of their mob days, apparently. And Fox, the illustrious Cook County State Attorney, has completely outdid her predecessor, and 8.1% of homicide cases have been dropped, according to her predecessor. 5.3 more percent under her predecessor, if that makes any sense. The Fox's office dropped 9.5% of felony sex crime cases in comparison to her predecessor. So apparently, you can get away with quite a bit in Cook County, Illinois, but it's not just limited, you guys, to Illinois. It's all across the country, and my next article will explain this well. The Daily Caller is reporting, "We will not prosecute. Left-wing prosecutors, many backed by Soros cash, implement soft-on-crime policies across America." So again, I post all my sources at aaronlujan.com and on my Twitter and on my Facebooks when I post these things. Chicago, Boston, Dallas, Philadelphia, and San Francisco have all been documented by the Daily Caller News Foundation as having soft on crime approaches, and link several of their top district attorneys to fundraising money coming from what we know as super PACs, backed by none other than George Soros, a major funder for several left-wing prosecutors who take a soft on crime approach. Well, if you are a billionaire trying to subvert the world's superpower, one of the strategic ways you could do this, assuming you're evil, is you undermine law and order. And the best way to undermine law and order from a strategic position is to have district attorneys and prosecution offices in cities and states soft on crime, which is why Soros poured more than $400,000 into the Illinois Justice and Public Safety PAC in 2016. That guess who donated to who? Fox, the woman who just lost control. Interesting how this works, doesn't it, you guys? I hope you're paying attention. I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention to the Daily Caller. Seattle City Council slashes police budget following calls to defund the police. Now, I might have unintentionally broadcast some fake news in my last episode or the one before. So if you heard me say Seattle completely removed, deplatformed, whatever you want to call it, expelled their police department, that's not true. What is true, though, according to the Daily Caller, is that they're slashing their budget, capping staff pay at $150,000, not including the police chief, of course, $50,000 from SPD travel and training activities, $800,000 from the retention and recruitment budget, and 100 cops are going to get their pink slips. Go find a job, bud. Again, this comes at a time when Seattle just got occupied and their downtown area taken over. Obviously, they're bowing to the demands of the radical left, and their mayor and their city council are complicit in these crimes. History will not judge you well as Americans. Benedict Arnold, look it up. That's the Seattle City Council. That's Tom Wheeler, the mayor of Portland. And I go on. Fox, Beetlejuice in Chicago, Cuomo, the Joker. We also know him as Gavin Newsom. The New York Post is reporting NYPD cops don't lift a finger as 11-year-old is beaten in broad daylight. I read this article, just really young kids, all black kids in Harlem, beefing over some social media. Apparently that's a thing. Thank the Lord I didn't grow up as a teenager and a young 20-something with social media, because of these types of incidences where you just get ganged up on, you get beaten, and cops sat in their car and watched a child. Yes, an 11-year-old girl is a child. My question is, where's your dad? Where's your mom? Why are you out in the streets after a basketball game getting beat up? What are you doing on social media? Apparently there's a breakdown in the family in Harlem. Cops have not wanting to engage, if I had to guess. They don't want to escalate things. They've been told to stand down. They've been given their orders. But if you listen to my podcast last time or the time before, we had 3 peaceful people right on chalk, Black Preborn Lives Matter, and they were arrested immediately outside of a Washington, D.C. Planned Parenthood. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Liberty Daily reported on a story that I didn't even know about. Fox, and we're at 33 minutes, you guys. We're almost done. We're about 80% down the road. Tucker rips lack of coverage of DC mass shooting, claims media silent to help Biden campaign. So I wasn't aware of this, but apparently we just had the U.S., one of the single biggest U.S. mass shootings occurred over the weekend in Washington, D.C. Did you guys hear about that? I didn't hear about it, but I have a suspicion onto why you didn't hear about it. Now, keep in mind, 21 people were shot in one single incident. Can someone say Columbine? Can someone say Sandy Hook? Remember how we used to hyperventilate and how that used to take over the news? Well, we had 21 people in one single incident shot. More than half of them were women. One was a D.C. police officer. And then it was the single biggest mass shooting in America this year, but you didn't hear anything about it. And I have to quote Tucker because I love the way Tucker paints the picture. Members of Congress didn't lock arms on the House floor to demand an end to the gun violence. CNN didn't book a procession of weepy teenage gun control activists. News organizations barely touched the story, and when they did, they moved fast. It wouldn't help the Biden campaign to talk about it, so they didn't talk about it. Well, apparently a teenager was killed and 20 others were wounded at the scene. A Washington, D.C. police officer is fighting for their life. But guess what? Here's the reason why I was saying it didn't get reported. 21 of them, all black. Wait, but I thought Black Lives Matter. And if 21 died and it was a gun, that would get the attention of the media. No. The shooter is suspected to be black. You see, you guys, I think what Tucker was saying without having to say it, I think he probably did say it because he's gangster like that. Black lives only matter if they're taken by a white police officer. Black lives don't matter to the corporate media and to the Black Lives Matter movement if the perpetrator is not black. Well, you know what I think? I think Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter. I think life is intrinsically valuable. I think that's what the March for Life movement's about. I think that's what the pro-life movement's about. That's what I'm about. I think identity politics is incredibly dangerous. I think that if there was institutional racism, I would be locking hands with anybody, regardless of their political stripe or persuasion, because racism is wrong. And it can be dealt with if it's an institutional systemic issue. It cannot be dealt with if it's a personal issue. So it didn't get reported on. And what did get reported, though, by the mainstream media was that Simon Cowell of American Idol fell off his electric bike in Malibu this weekend. So pray for Simon Cowell and his electric bike. I hope the electric bike is okay. I really do. The National File. Media blackout. Black man intentionally swerved SUV into white boys. No hate crime charges in Aurora, Colorado. Can you imagine? Just picture this here for a second. An Anglo man with a Make America Great Again hat in a pickup truck in the South sees two young black children and drives over them and shows in footage that he was trying to do it. Could you imagine the pandemonium that would result in that? You guys, it didn't even get any media attention outside of local Aurora, Colorado news. Personally, I don't see why hate crime charges should be filed, because I think that plays perfectly into this, well, if the aggressor is one color and the victim's another, it must be hate. You have to, first of all, I don't even agree with this precedent of hate crime charges. I don't agree with anybody pressing charges on the suspicion that they may be black and therefore they're a victim. What I do think we should do is file charges and make it an issue and talk about this fairly. The Mail Online is reporting Portland protesters to gather for 75th day of demonstrations. It continues on and on, unabated by any of law enforcement. Breitbart switching gears. NFL to ditch on-field anthem singers this season. Military police honor guards should also be limited. So no more Whitney Houston moments at the games. No more patriotism. I was a little critical of the glamorization of the police state, because there's a fine line between honoring law enforcement and military and glamoring them and grooming them as our masters. But I think the intention was always meant well, and I think most people were not psyoped in that situation. I think the fact that the NFL is taking this stance shows you where we're going on it. But not to be alarmed. If you're a social justice warrior, we're still going to be political. We're just going to have insignia on the helmets, insignia and stitching on the jerseys about Black Lives Matter and all that garbage. Going international, NBC's reporting Lebanese government resigns as fury over deadly explosion deepens political crisis. You know, I think this is one of those situations where a lot of what happened in that explosion we don't know. The fact that the government is stepping down shows you how grave and how serious this is. One of the interesting quotes is from a citizen who said, "They're blowing us up. We have nothing else to lose." You know, so they're going to the streets. They've reached their point. These protests and this type of anger is organic, it's natural, and it's going to win because it really captures the hearts and minds of well-meaning people, because good always wins in the end. When you concoct these phony color revolutions like Black Lives Matter and have it run by these infantile children from broken families who are just angry, it's not going to be sustainable. Yeah, we're going to have 70 plus days in Portland. Yeah, we're going to take some losses. But so long as we hold the line and keep this under control in these cities and show a use of force in the name of law and order and continue to address these issues in truth, these color revolutions will not succeed. However, what will succeed are the Lebanese people ensuring that they have peace and prosperity in their nation. Business Insiders reporting a U.S. Border Patrol agent arrested and charged with trafficking over 350,000 pills believed to be fentanyl. They found 330 grand in his home, 40 grand in his car. This was a U.S. Border Patrol agent in Tucson, Arizona. He went at 3 in the morning to the Phoenix airport, did some Tony Montana stuff, man. He placed 2 duffel bags into another vehicle. The Justice Department said in a press release. This is interesting. He had an assortment of drugs, including 21 kilograms of cocaine, 1 kilogram of heroin, and 1 kilogram of fentanyl. Roughly 350,000 pills that tested positive for fentanyl were found in the bags. Thought that was interesting. Breitbart, Indians, Vietnamese, and Tibetans rally in D.C. against Chinese aggression. I wanted to give a spotlight to these South Asian protesters in D.C. because I think they touch on an issue that doesn't get covered enough, even in the alternative truth-telling media, which is the fact that China is one of the biggest aggressors in the world. They're typically not viewed in that manner. Winnie the Pooh, who actually runs China, seems like a very passive beta male kind of type, probably his persona for the cameras and for the US. But I don't think people generally think of China as an aggressor. And I had a conversation with a friend at my home this weekend who actually has his master's degree in public policy. He works in military intelligence, and he's somewhat of a geopolitical scholar. And he brought up this issue without me really even bringing it up. And he was interesting to hear his perspective because he actually does this on a daily basis. And he was bringing up the issues of how they have been challenging some of the territorial rights with Argentina over islands off of their coast. I've had friends who have were engineers and worked on contracts with the Taiwanese government to build a military defense system because Taiwan was concerned about their sovereignty. In this article, they talk about the Vietnamese repeatedly brushing up against Chinese militarism. We had the Uyghur, I got to learn how to pronounce it, Muslim population, Muslim minority in China who have been having their organs harvested. We've had other issues like the stand down this summer. Early in the summer, the Indian Army had a gun battle with Chinese military over some territory. So apparently China is getting a little comfortable in their superpower clothes, and they're ready to push the world around a little bit. You know what stops a bully? A bigger bully. And that used to be the United States. Let's see if we still got it in us, folks. The New World Order report, the NWO report, since the New World Order is upon us, and I can actually say that now because it's 2020 and we're in the midst of a great awakening. I'm not weird anymore. Satanic Temple raffles free abortion, says killing unborn babies is ultimate offering to Satan. Clearly on its surface, that's disgusting. But I want to say in a weird, twisted way, I respect the Satanic Temple for being honest. They're not unlike Mitt Romney, who says he's a religious man of faith and, he's a Republican and he's never, stepped on an ant. But literally, Mitt Romney has been implicated in doing business with companies like the ones I mentioned earlier, selling fetal body parts to abortion providers and then claim to be pro-life. At least the Satanic Temple tells the truth, because they, as a Christian, as a Bible-believing person, what the Satanic Temple is stating is spiritually and biblically correct. It is an offering to Satan. If you actually go down history, the Aztecs did it. Different cultures had different variations of Satan, most popularly known as Baphomet. And throughout cultures in history, they would sacrifice children to Satan, generally that Baphomet image. So credit to the Satanic Temple for at least being honest about their religious abortion ritual. And if you want to get a little queasy in the stomach on these rituals, go to nworeport.me or go to my sources and read the horror that is now being mainlined as cool. Breitbart is reporting faith leaders protest Governor Gavin Newsom's order barring in-person worship. So while the Satanic Temple is holding raffles, Gavin Newsom is focused on barring Bible studies and church gatherings by people who love Jesus and believe that the Bible is true. And fortunately for my, call it quasi hometown of San Diego, California, a church service was held in protest. Wow, I left California thinking you guys were all lefties. Apparently I was wrong. Apparently there's a lot of freedom-loving, brave people, even in San Diego. The Liberty Council brought the challenge in court to Governor Newsom, and I want to quote it. Governor Gavin Newsom encourages tens of thousands of people to gather for mass protests, but he bans all in-person worship and home Bible studies and fellowship. The governor cannot disregard the First Amendment, nor can the state micromanage the form of worship by banning, singing, or chanting. This discriminatory treatment is unconstitutional. I think anybody without a hardcore political bias or partisanship, if they're going to be honest with themselves and not want to totally embarrass themselves, would admit this is a clear contradiction a clear cherry picking of the First Amendment. Yeah, you can go protest. Yeah, you can go to liquor stores. Yeah, you can go to marijuana dispensaries. Yeah, you can go have abortions and even sacrifice your child to Satan. But if you want to gather with a few Christians in your home and read from the book of Luke, I guess you need to go to prison and make room for the guy who's going to go rape and strangle his girlfriend. That's where we're at. So the Christian law firm Godspeed Calvary Church, according to the Christian law firm, Godspeed Calvary Church held 3 worship services Sunday in Ventura with 2,500 worshipers in one service, 26,000 participating online. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Liberty Council. Thank you, Calvary Chapel of California. Thank you, Pastor Rob McCoy. During his sermon, he said, quote, "And the powers that were given this nation were the first 3 words of the preamble of that Constitution, we the people. And you have freedom to worship your God," he added. "It's between you and him, and you're accountable to God, and no man is allowed to take that." In case you guys don't know, what sparked the American Revolution were pastors. They were known as the Black Robe Regiment, and the shots that were heard around the world were the first shots that were fired at Lexington Concord in Kentucky. That was the beginning of the American Revolution against the Patriots and the Redcoats. And you know what got the Patriots off of the what is it that you sit in church? Not the pulpit. I don't sit in them because I go to a cool church where the pastors wear skinny jeans and stuff. Just joking. What got the war started was the pastors telling his congregation, you have an obligation to God first. And if this government wants to violate your God-given rights, then you have not only permission, but you have a moral obligation to defend those rights for you and your children and their children's children. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and end with not so weird, not so depressing news story. It's from CNN. Here's your lollipop. The New York Times, White House reached out about adding Trump to Mount Rushmore. Ultimate troll. Thank you guys for joining me. This was episode 52 of Counterculture. Chinese election meddling, COVID's killing economy, Chicagoland trash. Today was August 11, 2020. Everything is at aaronlujan.com. Thank you for joining me. Peace.